The smell of engine oil had a way of grounding me. That morning, I was under a 76 Pontiac or wrist deep in grease when the mail slot clanked. Usually it was bills or junk, nothing worth washing my hands for, but something about the envelope made me stop. Cream-coloured, embossed, a little too delicate for this part of Charleston. It smelled like expensive perfume and bad intentions. I peeled off my gloves, wiped my hands on the nearest rag and picked it up. There it was, Cam's name, printed in that delicate cursive she always loved. My sister had never sent me so much as a birthday text. And now a wedding invitation? I opened it. To guest B, that's all it said. No Luna, no Radcliffe. Just a generic empty label, like I wasn't a person. I stood in my oil-stained overalls, holding the weight of that insult between my fingers, trying not to let it sink in. Sometimes the people closest to you put you furthest away. I'd heard that from my old neighbour, Miss Irene, and it rang like a bell right then. You'd think after years of this I'd be used to it, but it always finds new ways to sting. Growing up, I was always the one who didn't fit. Cam was the polished one, the pageant darling, the pride of the family. Me? I liked engines and dirty hands. Dad understood. Until the day he didn't wake up, he had my back. After that, it was like I disappeared from the family photo. Cam and Mom moved on like I was just a phase. I never fought to stay. I built my life above this garage, fixing up other people's messes and leaving my own behind. I made a good name for myself. Not fancy, but honest. I didn't need their brunches or fake hugs. In the corner of my shop sits something they probably thought I sold years ago. A dusty old Rolls-Royce Ghost. It used to be Dad's. No one else wanted it, so I took it. Broken as it was, I'd been quietly restoring it for years, not for revenge, for memory. After the envelope, curiosity got the better of me. I cleaned up, made some coffee, and sat at my laptop. Cam's wedding website was sleek, just like her. A countdown timer, a slideshow of perfect engagement photos, and a seating chart. I typed Luna Radcliffe into the guest search. Nothing. I typed again, slower, still nothing. Finally, I found it, a small guest B, listed near the back. No table number, no name, just unassigned staff overflow. It hit me harder than silence ever could. I stared at the screen. For a second, I laughed. It was either that or scream. She didn't want me there. She wanted to make sure I knew just how low I ranked. Not even a number, not even a seat. I closed the laptop. I should have let it go, should have laughed, thrown the envelope out and gone back to the carburetor I was rebuilding, but I didn't. My fingers drifted toward the dusty picture frame by the window. It was Dad, standing next to that same ghost, with a daisy in his pocket and grease on his cheek. He used to tell me, "Stand tall even when they shrink you." I held that frame for a long minute, let myself feel it all, not cry, not rant, just feel. I didn't text Cam, didn't call Mom, didn't post some sad story on Facebook. Instead, I stood up, walked to the back corner of the shop, and peeled the tarp off the Rolls-Royce. The silver hood ornament caught the sunlight like it still had something to say. Elegance isn't about being noticed, it's about being remembered. I'd been working on this car for 5 years, piece by piece with no one watching, no fanfare, just me and my memories. I never planned to bring it out, but maybe now was the time. I ran my hand over the hood. It purred under my touch like it was waiting. Later that night, I sat at the table with the invitation in front of me and the seating chart still up on my laptop. I whispered, almost amused, "If they want a ghost at their wedding, I'll give them one." The rain hit the tin roof like it was trying to wash something away. I lay in bed, wide awake, staring at the ceiling as water whispered down the window pane. That invitation was still sitting on my kitchen counter like a taunt. I couldn't stop thinking about it. How a name, or the lack of one, could slice so deep. Every drop tapping the glass pulled memories up like weeds. Dad's funeral came back sharp. The way Cam stood tall, dry-eyed, dressed like she was going to a gala. I'd cried so hard I couldn't speak. And no one, not Cam, not Mom, ever turned to ask if I was okay. They moved past it like grief had a schedule. I didn't. I still don't. I threw the covers off and padded barefoot across the hardwood to the garage. The air smelled like metal and damp concrete. That smell always steadied me. I opened the old ledger I kept in a dusty drawer, my way of keeping track of what I gave when no one remembered. Pages marked with dates and amounts. Rent I paid for Mum when she couldn't. Utility bills I covered. A deposit, $10,000, for a shared dream Cam once pitched to me years ago. Said she'd pay me back when things settled down. They never did. Memory is a mirror that shows us not who we were, but who we've become. I don't know who said it, but tonight it echoed like gospel. How much of myself have I given to people who never even looked? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? A flurry of papers, background chatter. A woman's voice. Luna, hi, this is Melanie from Cam's wedding team. Just confirming your role as background guest support. We'll need you there early to assist with the floral prep and back seating coordination. I didn't say a word, just let her keep digging. She kept talking. We're so grateful you sponsored part of the decor. Cam mentioned you helped fund the deposit years ago, so this all ties in beautifully. You've been such a silent supporter. Silent supporter, that was rich. She thought I was staff. I ended the call with a polite thank you and hung up without correcting her. My heart wasn't pounding, it was pacing. Slow, heavy, methodical. I walked over to the cabinet where I kept old tax files, pulled out a folder and found the bank transfer. Cam's name, the venue, the exact date, right there. I took pictures of every page, saved them to a hidden album on my phone. Then I found something that made me sit down. It was a note, Dad's handwriting. Yellowed, folded. Luna, I know what you gave up. I see it even if they never will. Dad. I stared at it until the ink blurred, but I didn't cry. I tucked it back gently, like placing a bone in sacred ground. In America, we don't always talk about it. But family debt isn't just money, it's respect. Someone said that once in a diner I used to go to. I didn't get it then, I do now. They wanted me small, quiet, grateful just to be included in the background of their story. I was the engine under the hood while they polished the paint, for show. I replayed the call again, slower this time, took notes on Melanie's tone, her words, the slip-ups. She said too much. I'd be ready when it mattered. I didn't need to blow up. I didn't need to yell. They expected me to sit in the back, smile, and fade into the wallpaper. That was their mistake. I walked over to the Rolls-Royce Ghost and slid into the driver's seat. The leather still held the scent of my father's cologne. I rested my hands on the wheel and stared through the rain-streaked windshield like it was a window to something I hadn't faced yet. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning remembrance. They didn't know I kept records. They didn't know I had receipts. And they sure didn't know I'd show up dressed in truth. I pulled out a manila envelope and wrote on it in black ink, "In case of lies." Then I sealed everything inside. The photos, the ledger copies, the note from Dad. If dignity has a shape, it's in how you choose your silence. I walked back inside, turned off the lights in the garage, and stood in the doorway a moment longer, watching the ghost in the dark. I whispered, "Let's see how they like their ghost." Morning light filtered through the blinds, weak and unforgiving. I reached for the coffee mug I'd left half full overnight, but the liquid tasted bitter, thick, acrid. The silence in my apartment felt heavy, like someone had turned off the laughter and left only empty air. I opened a mail catalogue lying on the table. The scent of lilies drifted from its pages, and for a moment I was back in a funeral home, standing by Dad's casket. Cam's face hovered in memory, stoic, distant, unflinching. I shivered as the lily petals danced in that memory. I crossed the room to the shelf holding my old college yearbook and journal. Flipping through pages, I saw Cam always in front, smiling, center stage, while I was tucked into corners, shadows. I closed the journal and felt a sudden surge of betrayal. I had watched myself shrink in her shadow frame by frame. Sometimes you don't know you're invisible until someone walks right through you. That line haunted me now. I swallowed once. Was I invisible all along? I remembered that night in college. I had baked cookies, her favorite chocolate chip, and made the trip to surprise her. I crept up to her dorm door, nerves in my throat. As I approached, voices floated out. Cam's laugh, bright and sharp, cutting through the hallway. She's not really my sister, more like the family maid with a bank account, I heard her say, followed by laughter. The words struck a nerve I never knew existed. I stood still, frozen. I never knocked. I never spoke about it. But that moment etched itself into me. I murmured to the darkness. That was the night I learned love had conditions in our house. Back in my apartment, I felt the urge to confront her. I typed a message. Dear Cam, you once told me I was nothing, but No. I deleted the draft. Instead, I tore a sheet from my journal and wrote, You tried to silence me by pretending I never mattered, but your silence says more about you than my absence ever did. I stared at the lines, then lit a match and dropped the paper into the kitchen sink. The flame flickered up, then consumed the ink. I watched it disintegrate, word by word, not letting go of memory, but letting go of the weight. In front of the mirror, I rehearsed what I might say at that wedding. Quiet voice, measured tone. I was never supposed to be the problem. I was the solution you never appreciated. My reflection trembled, my voice cracked. I typed Cam into browser, browsed dresses, not for vanity, but for armor. I wasn't coming to clash. I was coming to stand. They wrote me out of the story, but I know how to write my own ending. My fingers brushed against a drawer and I opened it. A silver hairpin fell into my palm, a comb he gave me for graduation years ago. Dad had said, even the quietest girl in the room should wear a crown. I pressed it to my chest. Then I set it beside the envelope I'd labeled in case of lies. I gathered the invitation from the kitchen table. The envelope felt heavy in my hand, as if holding every slight I ever swallowed. I read it aloud quietly, then crumpled it and dropped it into the trash. I stepped back, fingers trembling, and whispered to the room, This time I'm RSVPing in my own way. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in, blending into the stream of guests. I wore a muted slate gown, modest but precise, and carried only a small clutch. I didn't need to draw attention, I only needed to be seen. Whispers trailed me across the foyer. Is that her? She's not invited, is she? The tension was a hum in the air, but I stepped forward, chest steady, shoulders squared. The ballroom glowed under chandeliers. Portraits lined the entrance hall. Cam smiled in every frame. I noticed one slide, a photograph of a father and daughter at a piano, titled My Music, My Daughter, with Cam's name beneath it. My heart stuttered. We had played that piece together. They had stolen it, assigned our memory to her. I caught faces in the crowd shifting, confusion, recognition, maybe guilt. How dare they take my memory and call it hers? The slideshow continued, then flickered. The image dissolved into something darker, an exposé. On the screen appeared a document, corporate deed, signatures I recognized, the line from my old ledger, property once recorded under my name, now transferred to Cam's holding company, and beneath that, receipts of venue payments traced back to my bank record. The hall went silent. Gasp followed gasp. I stayed rooted. Inside, vindication thrummed. This was my moment. My adrenaline pulsed as I slipped to the back door of the projection closet, unseen. The technician startled, fumbled with the controls. I stepped beside him, voice low. That clip played at my request. His face went pale. He whispered, "I was told to run the file when Cam's name appeared. No denials, no argument." I walked out, leaving questions echoing behind. I walked into the ballroom during the next song. Music turned on again, soft, hollow. Guests parted as I passed Cam and my mother. They looked at me as though I'd risen from ash. I offered only a calm smile, then quietly, "That was never yours to take." Eyes snapped to me. Cam's face drained, lips parted. The hush swallowed the music. I turned and walked away, steady, unbroken. That moment was mine. I slipped outside onto a balcony overlooking the party lights. The night air was cool against my skin. I leaned on the railing, listening to muffled reactions below. I whispered to myself, "They'll try to spin this, but I've already spun my fate." I slipped out of the ballroom, pretending I needed water. The music and laughter dimmed behind the thick doors, and for a moment the air was cooler, calmer. My hands shook just enough for me to notice as I reached for a glass. I'd rehearsed a dozen ways to tell her the truth, but none of them felt right. Cam stood alone by the wine bar, scrolling her phone, a half smile frozen on her face. She looked up, faking surprise. "Luna," she said sweetly, "enjoying yourself?" There's a silence that says more than shouting ever could. I chose that one tonight. Her eyes flicked over me, the gown, the hair comb. She tilted her head. "You really couldn't help yourself, could you? Always needing to make a scene." Her words came like sugar over knives. "You're jealous of my new family. You could have ruined the happiest day of my life. For what? Old stories?" She laughed softly like she was the only one in on a joke. I sipped water, felt my jaw tighten. She mocked the way I stood, the way I held the glass, even the way I breathed. I kept my face still. I leaned in just enough for her to hear me. "You should stop using what's not yours," I said quietly, "before someone rewrites the ending." It wasn't a threat. It was a door she could still walk through. Cam smirked, straightened her dress, and whispered back, "No one listens to ghosts, Luna. You're just background noise." The line landed like a stone. I felt my hand clench, but forced myself to set the glass down gently. You can only slap silence so many times before it slaps back. As I turned away, she muttered loudly to a passing guest, "Some people never grow up, always playing victim." The guest chuckled awkwardly. My steps stopped mid-stride. That was the moment my private pain shifted into public resolve. I glanced back at her not with rage, but with the kind of stare that tells a person the rules have changed. She looked unsettled for the first time all night. In the restroom, I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror. My pulse thudded in my ears. I opened my phone and began uploading pieces of evidence to a secure folder. Screenshots, receipts, notes. I typed a message. "You taught me shame, but I taught myself worth." Then saved a draft email labeled "Release if harmed." Sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop whispering. When I stepped back into the hallway, an older guest, a family friend who'd once given me a birthday card when no one else did, was leaning against the wall with a glass of champagne. She'd seen everything. Our eyes met. She raised her glass slightly. Not a toast, not a warning, just a knowing. My heart raced. Someone was watching. Maybe an ally, maybe a wild card. Either way, the night wasn't over. I didn't go back into the ballroom right away. After what happened in the hallway with Cam, I needed air, or maybe just silence. I took a left and slipped into a narrow service hallway near the projection booth. It was dim, quiet, smelled faintly of old carpet and floral spray. My heels echoed. I found a side room that was empty, pulled the door shut, and exhaled. The envelope I'd been carrying all night was in my hand before I even realized I'd reach for it. I sat down on a worn love seat and stared at it. I could feel the beat of my pulse in my neck. This was the file I'd kept separate. One I hadn't even planned on opening unless things turned, and they had. I nearly lost myself in anger. Now I must use it wisely. I peeled the seal back and pulled out the contents. Legal paper, aged but intact. I scanned the top line. It was a deed, my name and my father's listed as co-owners. The transfer date was a month before he passed. Below it, in fresh ink, was a line transferring it to Cam's LLC, a company she formed 2 weeks after his funeral. My chest went tight. His signature was there, but my gut twisted. I knew that hand, I knew that stroke of the pen, and something in me whispered, he didn't sign this freely. I snapped a photo, emailed it to myself, then another, backup of the backup. This is more than proof, I said quietly. It's vindication. And yet I hesitated. My fingers hovered over my phone screen. I drafted a message to Cam's lawyer, threatening to go public, then deleted it. If I expose this, will I be seen as greedy or vindictive? I could already hear the voices. She waited for the wedding to ruin it. She's bitter, jealous. But then I remembered something an old mentor once told me. Truth told at the wrong time is just noise. This wasn't noise. This was the final note. I took another breath. They erased me. Now I erase their lies. Back in the foyer, guests milled around, laughing in clumps of perfume and tuxedos. I spotted Cam holding court near the entrance to the ballroom. I didn't rush. I walked, quiet, slow, the envelope in my hand. When I got close enough, I said, "Here's the final bill." She froze. I opened the flap and pulled out a check. One she wrote from my account to the venue 3 months ago. I had the statements. I had the timestamps. Her name wasn't on it. Mine was. I held it up. Funny how things get paid without permission. A hush fell. Conversations dropped. Cam's face drained color, her smile falling like wet paint. For a second, nobody moved. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence roared. She lunged, tried to snatch the check. "This is a fabrication," she spat. "You twisted everything. Do you know what you're doing?" A man stepped between us, security. Calm, neutral. She turned to him, desperate. "She's lying. This could ruin everything." I met her eyes. "You already started the ruin. I'm just finishing your narrative." People stepped back. I could see it in their faces now, not shock, but recognition. This wasn't new to them, it was just new to be caught. Cam retreated. Her hand shook as she pushed through the ballroom doors. I didn't follow. Instead, I slipped out to the balcony. The breeze was soft, almost too soft to feel. I let my body settle into the moment, and that's when I saw her. Mara Knox, in the far corner, phone still in hand. Her expression unreadable, but her eyes sharp. She met mine. No words, just a slight nod. I stared back, realization setting in. She saw everything. I stayed in the foyer long after Cam stormed off. The ballroom lights glowed behind translucent curtains. Guests lingered, clustering in whispered bands. I watched tables shift, faces turn inward, glances flick to my direction. I was both exposed and invisible. The air felt tight. Now the silence is watching me back. I heard a voice rise above hushed chatter. A well-dressed aunt known for her stern tone cleared her throat. "Excuse me, who is Luna Radcliffe to all of you?" The room jolted. Cam faltered mid-step. Eyes darted, whispers surged. For decades I had been erased. Tonight, one sentence chipped that. My heart pounded behind the collar of my dress. I stood, I let them wait. A simple question can topple years of erasure. My calm edged in. I didn't rush. I leaned slightly forward, gaze firm. Somewhere inside I tasted shift. From the dim corner, Mara Knox stepped forward, her shoulders square, voice steady. I was there the day they erased her name. I heard them plan it. She extended a small recorder and a faded letter toward the aunt. Gasps rippled. The room contracted, then expanded. Eyes met. Cam's lips parted. My pulse sang relief. She had a witness. Cam's face turned red. Octavia blinked. A few guests murmured in surprise. I took a step forward and spoke clearly. "You deserve to know the truth, not the edited version." I never raised my voice. I held Mara's device. I held their attention. Evidence passed from hand to hand. Some nodded, others recoiled. The tableau shifted, Cam's defences cracked. Accusations flew, betrayal, lies, manipulation. I didn't argue. I watched faces realign toward me, some in pity, some in respect. The weight of being ignored lifted just enough to breathe. Inside me something changed. I was no longer defined by silence. I remembered the daisy Dad gave me, the hairpin at my waist, and how small things held weight. I resolved that this moment was not about vengeance. It was truth for all who were silenced. I steadied my breath. A new fight would come, but I would meet it. Cam recoiled toward the doorway. The room pulsed. I backed away, stepping outside into the balcony. Night air hit my face. I heard footsteps behind me. Cassius Rook stood just inside the door, holding a legal folder. He eased the top open. My chest seized. This wasn't over. The sound of the reception leaked out onto the driveway when the car door opened. The Rolls-Royce Ghost slid to a stop under the mansion's awning, its chrome reflecting the chandeliers through the tall windows. Guests standing near the entrance shifted. Murmurs rose like wind in a wheat field. I stepped out slowly. The rain had stopped, but the smell of wet pavement clung to the air. My heels clicked once, twice, and then silence followed me into the foyer. The whispers carried, "Is that her?" She came back. I held my head level, my father's silver comb hidden in my hair. For years I'd been the shadow in their pictures. Tonight I was the frame. Photographers and guests pivoted as if on cue. Their lenses and stares swung away from Cam's smile and locked on me. Cam's eyes narrowed, her lips parting to summon staff. Music faltered, a skipped beat. I didn't rush. I moved toward the projection screen at the far end of the ballroom, letting the weight of every glance press against my back. My own voice inside, they gave me nothing. Tonight I take it all. The music dropped into a lull. I crossed the center of the dance floor without stopping. The lights dimmed slightly, and for a heartbeat it felt like slow motion. Phones lifted, gasps, murmurs, flickers. I was no longer the uninvited guest. I was the event itself. I passed Cam at the center. Her perfume, once familiar, felt foreign now. I kept walking, each step deliberate, the room's noise falling into a hush. At that very moment, someone near the back uploaded a clip. Within seconds, phones buzzed. Screens lit up with the title, "Ghost of the Bride." The video showed my entrance, my stride, and Cam's stunned expression. Guests looked from me to their screens, then back again. Whispers doubled, then tripled. I stayed composed, heart hammering like a snare drum. Vindication came not with cheers, but with the shift of a crowd's gaze. Behind the stage, movement churned. Cam's allies whispered, her staff scrambled with tablets, faces pale. I slipped to a side door and watched from the edge. This wasn't chaos for me, it was clarity. My moment wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming my name in public daylight. I breathed slowly, letting the sight of Cam's wobbling kingdom settle in. For the first time, the burden wasn't mine. Then the screen behind the stage flickered. A microphone crackled. Cassius Rook's voice rolled out over the hall. "For those who demand the truth, here's your unedited version." A hush swept through. Guests turned, eyes wide. The projection glowed. I exhaled, steady, knowing the final act was about to begin. Cassius Rook's voice echoed over the speakers, low and steady as the footage rolled across the ballroom's giant screen. Guests who had been sipping wine now stood frozen. Audio clips played of Cam's calls with vendors, her signature on property transfers, her mocking words about the sister with a bank account. The gasps came in waves. People who'd smiled at Cam minutes earlier now looked at her with narrowed eyes. Some drifted toward the exits without a sound. Others turned to me, their expressions unreadable. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood there, hands folded, letting the evidence speak. For years I'd been forced to defend myself with silence. Tonight, silence defended me. Cam's face drained of colour as the final clip played. Her hands trembled around the bouquet she'd been holding. She swayed, and for a second I thought she'd fall. Staff reached for her, but she pushed them away and steadied herself on the edge of a table. Adair stepped forward, hand out, but stopped short when the crowd stared at him like he was part of the scheme. Cam straightened, eyes darting. Without a word, she walked off the stage, through the foyer and out into the night. No apologies, no excuses. Just confusion carved into her face like a mask cracking. The room didn't cheer. There was no victory dance. Only the heavy awareness of a story flipped inside out. I slipped out onto the terrace for air. The night was warm and heavy with the scent of magnolia. The music inside had lost its edge, replaced by quiet murmurs. Serene came to stand beside me, no words at first. Riven appeared next, hesitant, hands in pockets. I should have said something sooner, he muttered, voice raw. Marisol pressed a folded napkin into my palm, her whisper steady. She never deserved your quiet. I met their eyes and gave a small smile, not triumphant, just grounded. Inside, June Moore raised a glass silently in my direction. It was the first time in my life a toast had been made to my name without me earning it by sacrifice. Later, I found myself alone at a corner table, fingers brushing over a locket I'd worn since college. Inside was a folded note my mother had hidden there, one I'd never opened until tonight. The paper was thin, handwriting slanted. You were never invisible even when we failed to see you. My breath caught. Tears came, but they weren't bitter. They felt like release. Years of noise emptied into a single clear moment. Meanwhile, the clip, Ghost of the Bride, was already exploding online. Guests at the reception were sharing it before dessert. By morning, talk shows and podcasts would dissect the footage. Mixed reactions, of course. Some people doubted, but most saw what I had lived, poise under fire, dignity when silence might have been easier. A message pinged on my phone, an invitation to speak on a show called Dignity Under Fire. I looked at the screen and felt the weight shift. My past wasn't baggage now. It was a story I could tell on my own terms. Hours later, as I packed my bag to leave Charleston, a knock sounded at the door. I opened it to find Cassius standing there, briefcase in hand, expression unreadable. "What if I told you?" he said slowly. "There's one more clause in the will." His tone wasn't threatening, it was something else, an opening. I raised an eyebrow, steady, no longer fearful. "Then I'd say," I replied, "I'm ready to read it."